It is 8:30. We will call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Item number 3 on the agenda is an invitation for a citizen to schedule time on the commission agenda for an item not listed. Just a note, there's a 5-minute time limit per person, and anyone wanting to speak during this agenda item must sign in prior to the meeting. There were no signatures. So we'll move on to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections, Stacy?
Yes, we have to add another item to our exec session, 12523, consulting with legal counsel.
Okay. Would there be a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5 is our consent agenda items. Would there be a motion to approve?
Move approval. Second.
That includes the approval of the minutes, travel requests, personnel action notices, cellular authorizations, and the human services report. Any discussion on any of those items? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item number 6 is routine business. We have approval of the claims. Would there be a motion to approve?
Motion approved. Second.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
6B, moving on to department head reports. We'll start with with county development. Richard.
Good morning. You've got nothing to add there. Last night I was just in and monitored the weather and posted statements on the website for the county, and not much damage that I have heard of outside of maybe some tree limbs and stuff here in town, but that's all that I have.
Any questions for Richard? Great, thanks.
Morning. We've been graveling on the east side of the county now that we are done picking up the trees within the right-of-way that fell with the storm damage, but what we are having an issue with is some folks are continuing to drag trees that fell down on private property into the county right-of-way. And I know that we had talked, we were not going to remove that stuff, so I've been sending out some letters in regards to that. It's not only trees, it's also I know that there's some other storm debris like calf huts that are within the right-of-way. Been reaching out to them folks to get that removed. So just giving you an update on that. We were done with our storm removal cleanup with the trees that fell down that were wind blown. Getting further down in my report, we've gotten some progress on our buildings, and I'll get to that a little later. Work with the city of Aurora and the railroad to fix the crossing in Aurora. It's better. Not going to say it's perfect, but it's better. So that was good to get that something done with that. And then on the 9th and 10th, I was out in Pierre for the highway superintendent's summer meeting. Update here on the Sinai Bridge. You can see that I visited the site last week, but I was out there yesterday. They do have the east approach. It's completed. The west approach, we had some grade issues. They do have to do some undercut and excavating to repair those areas, so it's going to be a little bit yet to get that asphalt done. And once that asphalt is, and the grade worked redone and the asphalt's completed, they're going to get in there and get the guardrail and seating done, and we should be, I'm hoping, within the next couple weeks. Hoping. But if minus any of that grade work, I mean, it probably would have been this week. But with that failure, it pushed it back a little bit. I know the river was up at one time, so I'm guessing we're dealing with some super saturated grade, and it didn't really show up until the trucks got on it. So I guess it was better to have it happen now than when it was open to traffic. The repair work on the Sinai shop, the contractor was in on 6/14 and completed on 6/14. There was probably around 14, 15 guys there, 4 pieces of equipment. They did a bang-up job, and they did a really good job. I mean, they didn't cut any corners. Hurricane ties are all on. Pretty impressive on what they did, because that saved us a lot of money compared to having to replace that whole shop. Like I said, that work they did with that bow in the wall and the total separation, I was very impressed. On top of that, I had an electrician come in and give an okay on all the wiring. He checked everything over and replaced what was damaged from that wall being separated. There was, all the wires were within the wall, and when that wall bowed out, it ripped the wires off. And then the only kind of checklist item that I wanted to get checked out was the radiant heat tubes. We're going to have those looked at. The bill that we're going to be submitting at the next meeting is only going to be a partial bill due to the fact the one door is going to be replaced, but that isn't expected until probably August. I'm hoping to have that door in by winter. The door that is there, it's functioning. We're going to try to limit its use, but at least it's functioning. But there was some damage. It's pretty tweaked. Like I said, we're going to try to limit its use, but it does function. Just with insurance taking care of it, I figured we better get a new door. Aside from that, I know I'm going to work with getting the insulation blown back into the roof. The wall insulation was all batting, so that was able to be reused. None of it was damaged by any water, so we could reuse all that. And then they just added a few more in, and they took care of that within their numbers. So they handled that. So I was very impressed to have that done. Working with Stacy and Keith with the roofing on the shop. I know he got back to me with some tin. I believe they had to order some of that tin, but I'm hoping that gets done soon. It seems like when it rains, it pours, because we're taking a lot of water on in the shop. One of the issues that we're having is with some electrical. I don't understand it, but it's popping the doors open, so now we're tripping the breakers before we leave, because we've showed up here after a couple of storms and the doors are open. So if you guys have driven by and noticed that, it's not that we left them open. They popped open in the storm. So trying to move along with that. Just it's slow with that roof. I know we did some temporary fixing, but hoping they can get in there soon. Bose continues to do some asphalt patching. I'm sure you guys have seen him around out and about in the county. 6/15, I met with the City of White maintenance staff. It sounds like they're going to be doing some sewer work in White, and it's going to involve our County Road 25, so I'll keep you guys in the loop of what's going to happen there. That's probably a project that might happen next year or even the year after. Yesterday I met with Bangor Township on another culvert project. That one looks like a good one too. They're gonna get me that application and I'll get that to Stacy. So, we're having some townships take advantage of that. I'm wanting more, but, just haven't heard from any of the other ones. And Stacy, could you, whoever controls that,
Did you have a question, Larry?
I was just wondering what's progressing on the Bruce shop then.
I'm waiting to see with insurance. I have not gotten any quotes as far as, replacement building. On the Bruce shop, we've worked with Langland Trucking. We don't have power there. That meter and everything got ripped off, so we worked with Langland Trucking. We got a fuel tank is temporary serviced in there, and it does have a lock on it. What's also a lock on the electrical box, so we can throw the breaker off so it cuts power, so we don't have to worry about losing fuel. But we do have fuel up there, but I'm in the process of getting things put together, and I'm guessing that's something that we'll want to advertise. So I know at some point in time we'll have to sit down and I suppose we better know what we're going to maybe get for insurance on that building before we move forward.
Do we have a deductible on our insurance?
$10,000 is typically what it is.
Is that per occurrence or per location?
I think it's per occurrence, so
So it'll all be one $10,000 deductible?
I think so. I
What
believe
budget
so.
will that come out of?
A new building in Bruce?
Well, we've got our building here, and then we've got the building that we did Sinai, right? So you're saying there's one $10,000 deductible that'll and
That is from, what, you're asking which budget?
do we take that out of county building, the 301, or where will that get? paid out
Yes, if it's a building project, it'll come out of 301.
of? For the insurance deductible?
Yes.
Brian, you had one more item you wanted to talk to?
Yeah, I know you guys just approved the claim. One of the claims on there was a new pickup for the highway department. If we recall, I did attach the minutes from that on that claim. I'm not sure if you guys seen that or not, but that was ordered last year in July, and I just received it last week. So that being said, if I was to order another pickup, we'd be looking at a year. I have found one that is sitting on a lot, and I'm hoping I can get consensus from you guys. This would be under my budget. I did have it budgeted for 2 pickups. I had $90,000 budgeted for 2 pickups, and the pickup that I just received last week, they did honor that price. But with everything going up, including new vehicles, this seems pretty fair, because even if I would order one, it would probably be in around that 60 mark. So just I'm hoping I can get a consensus from you guys if you guys are good with me staying under budget, and this would be looked at the next meeting and approved.
So Brian, just to clarify, this is on your 2023 budget to order
2022.
2022 budget, and so
Yep,
it
yep.
fits anyway.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to equalization. Jacob?
Good morning.
Morning.
Some legislation that will cause us to rewrite at least one resolution that we have on the books pertaining to discretionary formula, and then it also will allow you the ability to expand that based on 2 different types of properties. So the one that would be rewritten is Resolution 2034, which is for commercial residential structures or apartments. Currently on the books, it's a 5-year program.
first year being 25% taxable, second year 50, third year 75. Then in the fourth year, it goes to 100% of the full and true value is taxable. The way that will change with this Senate Bill 162 is it makes it a 7-year program. So the first year will remain at 25, second year is again 25, third year at 50, fourth year at 50, fifth year at 75, sixth year at 75, and then finally in the 7th year, the full and true value becomes taxable. So that should be pretty easy to rewrite that resolution to make those changes. The other two property types that it pertains to would be, quote, an affordable housing structure containing 4 or more units. And I think that the way I read this and interpret it, it's kind of redundant because an affordable housing structure containing 4 or more units is already treated in our eyes like an apartment. So Resolution 2034 would cover this and allow that 7-year cycle for the discretionary formula on those types of buildings. But we can still write the resolution that pertains exactly to that section of that Senate bill. We also have the availability to decide if you like to declare a specific portion of the county as a quote-unquote slum area or blighted area, and then designate that area for redevelopment. Any new construction in one of those designated areas would be set up to use this same cycle for discretionary formula on that 7-year window. Now, we don't have anything currently in the county that we would designate as such, but you know, just for instance, if you would take a section of town that was residential from years and years ago, and that would be better suited as an industrial park in Brookings City or something like that, you could declare that section of town as a blighted area. They could remove the housing, start building industrial properties, and that would fall under the 7-year discretionary formula as well. Stacy and I think, are going to work together on rewriting the current resolution for the apartments, and then you'll have to give some direction on if you want us to write those other resolutions for the other 2 types of properties. We may not ever use them, but at least the resolutions are there to allow us to use them if the need arises. You have any questions on that?
I have one.
Yeah.
Do you know for sure, Jacob, when you talked about that affordable housing structure with 4 or more units, does that only apply to rental? Because in the case of townhouse development where you might have 4 or more units, those are all individually owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're taxed as owner occupied. I'm wondering if that's something that still falls within that category.
I don't think it would. The law continues housing structures containing 4 or more units, but they have to rent under the median. It's based on income of the median income of the county, and then it rents based under that.
So it specifically calls out that it's rented,
Right.
rental property. Okay.
Yep.
And Jacob, you said our current ordinance is commercial, and what else?
We have ordinances on the books for discretionary formula on ag buildings, which is not affected by this new Senate bill. We have them on there for platted lots in groups of 5 or more. That's also not affected by this Senate bill. And then the third one that we have on the books is for commercial residential structures or apartments. We just have to change the percentage of the scale on that discretionary reduction. And then the other 2 would have to be written from scratch. We don't have anything on those yet.
Do you know approximately, and I'm sure it was in your report when we looked at it for the year, how many properties do we have that are currently on discretionary formula?
Pages and pages and pages of them.
Pages and pages?
I don't have a number. I mean, it's a lot. When we talk about that at the county board time,
Exactly.
there's probably 700 to 800 properties that have discretionary reduction on them.
And when I looked at the information that came out, if I understood it correctly, if we don't adopt a new resolution, ours goes away.
Just on this apartment one. So
Right.
the other 2 are unaffected, but this one changing the percentage. If we don't rewrite the resolution and adopt that, then that one goes away completely.
And that's the commercial and the residential.
That's the apartment one.
Okay. And if we don't adopt a resolution, and there's a city in the county that wants to do that, they can just pass it and override us. Is that correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah,
the new resolution will affect the current one?
No,
Or
the
just
current
all
ones will
new?
continue on the scale they're on. And any new properties coming onto this for this construction year will start with this new cycle. I should mention too that if we write these 3 resolutions and then say, for instance, Brookings City comes in and this is the how would you say that? This is the minimum percentage scale that it could go. They could change that to be a 7-year cycle that's 100% exempt from taxation each of those 7 years, and that would supersede what we've done.
Did you follow this legislation at all when it was going through?
I didn't.
I was just curious, there has to be something that's behind that.
I think a large part of it came out of the summer study session related to affordable housing. And so rental property was a primary piece of where the discussion originated from. I'm not sure how all of the other pieces kind of came into being, but part of it came out of that summer study.
And I know this has kind of come down the pipe as a couple years ago, they introduced the idea that they could create an additional levy for affordable housing that would be somewhere between the commercial levy and the owner-occupied levy, but that failed. And I think this is more manageable.
And if I remember right from when I looked at that, the cities have the right, when they pass their resolution, to include anything within the 3-mile joint jurisdiction area.
That's right.
So that would be probably the area that would be most impacted for Brookings County, in my opinion.
Any other questions?
Just a quick question on
Yeah.
timing. I know you're always on top of these things and you want to get it done right away. What's the timing on this? If we delay it 2 or 3 or 4 months while you rewrite the other two or write the other two, is that an issue, or do we need to have it done in the next 30, 60 days?
I think you want to get it done before we start coming up on the November 1 deadline for our new assessment properties for sure.
Okay.
But I don't think it would take more than a day or two to rewrite the existing and write 2 additional ones, bring them to the next meeting and put them on the agenda for passing.
All right, then I don't have a problem with you doing that.
Okay, sounds good.
And I think the resolution that we have now lapses under the law July 1st.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
right.
move forward.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Marty, you've got 6 minutes. Will that work? 6? 6 minutes until our scheduled 9 a.m.? We can always come back, Marty.
No, that's fine. Good morning. Jail statistics. These are statistics from yesterday. And Brookings County inmates, we have 24. And I see last night we gained 3. I think 1 from Lake County out of the 3. But 24 of our own inmates, 5 from Moody County, and we have 4 females from Lake County. We continue to stay busy with the 24/7, anxious for the phase 2, which I harp on every time I come, but it's getting closer. It's getting closer. They got tile down and they're painting, and I think it'll go fast now, I'm hoping. Also, they've been cleaning up over the 21 parking lots, so I think that'll help once we get things cleaned up and start looking better around the building and stuff. So I'm anxious to get rid of that stuff on the east side of the sheriff's office and so forth. So anyway, staff has been busy. You know, it's summertime, lots of complaints on speeding and those types of things. We address as much as we can in those areas. I want to thank the highway department. They put the radar boards up on South Lake Drive at Ponset, and I guess when they were putting them out, they were so happy at the Methodist Church camp they wanted to feed them, I guess. So there's 2 radar boards, one in the area of that smoking, that bar. Yeah, and then the other one is at the, when you come out of the state park, about in the area of the Methodist Church. So, yeah, so I think it'll help. It should help. You know, we did a traffic study last year, and 85% when we did that for 2 weeks, 20,000 cars went through that. And it was an 85% that were going by the speed limit. But there was cars that were speeding there too, but 85% was abiding by the speed limit. So, you know, but I hope the boards will help a little bit.
I saw the video. I'm getting into 6 minutes, sorry. I saw the video on your Facebook page. Those signs, are they permanently there, or will you be moving those around the county? And how are they powered?
Oh, they're solared. Yeah. And we couldn't move them. Yeah, those. But when we wrote the grant, it was specifically for that area. So I'd have to check with the highway safety that I can move them, but they are ready to move. I mean, the guy could move them if we had to, but the areas that we have issues with, those I want to just keep in those areas and then apply for more grants for other areas. Now, we do have a mobile, portable one that if I have an area that needs, that we can use that.
They're very nice. What did the two cost, you know, roughly?
Those are around, they're under 5,000 a piece. Now, this one is a little more, you know, every year they get better. And this one has a traffic count, and it's got a computer in it. It does a lot of things for us. You know, it even come up with a message if we want to put a message, you know, like slow down or the fish are biting at Ponset or whatever we want to do on it. But it was an 80-20 match. So 80% from South Dakota Department of Highway Safety and then 20% from the county. So anyway, on the 15th, we had coffee with the deputies at the Valley, and we did a drone and a dog presentation there. On the 17th, we had a mental health emergency committee type meeting at the hospital. And of course, I always bring up, it seems like we're always dealing with emergency committees, and you know, you think the process would get easy for us, but you know, each committal is a little different, you know, so we're still dealing with that. I think we came up with some understanding there. You know, the police department, the new chief, or the interim chief was there. He comes from an area and gets mental health, you know, and so he gets it on what's going on and so forth. So, you know, I think we got it probably somewhat taken care of that day on some of the issues that we're seeing. Last night, went to the OAC for the volunteers, and I didn't realize I don't know what we do without them. Over 3,000 volunteer hours, so that keeps that place humming. You know, it's always the same ones, too, you know, that are putting in a lot of the hours, and which is good. Other than that, unless you guys have some questions, I'll quit at that.
Questions for Marty?
Commissioner Pierce, you got to have another question.
I already asked mine.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Marty. And then Dustin's report was at the email yesterday, so we've got that as well. I think, any questions related to Dustin's report or comments related to that one?
I'd just like to thank Dustin and Lisa for the event last night. It was very well hosted, and Dustin did a good job explaining all the stats on the facility. Like Marty said, over 3,500 hours of volunteer hours that Dustin's been tracking. That's amazing. So thanks for those volunteers.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. The back clock says 9 o'clock. Is that appropriate? We'll do our item number 7. Our schedule agenda item for 9 o'clock is a second reading and public hearing, and then action to approve ordinance 2022 number 3, an ordinance amending 2007-02 revised subdivision ordinance for Brookings County, South Dakota, and providing for the administration, enforcement, and amendment thereof pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 11-2 and amendments thereof. I will read it in its entirety, I guess. So, Brookings County Ordinance number 22-03, an ordinance amending 2007-02 revised subdivision ordinance for Brookings County, South Dakota, and providing for the administration, enforcement, and amendment thereof pursuant to SDCL 11-2 and amendments thereof. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners has appointed a county planning commission, hereinafter referred to as the Planning Commission, to recommend appropriate regulations to be enforced therein, and whereas the Planning Commission has recommended amendments to the 2007-02 revised subdivision ordinance pertaining to Brookings County, and whereas the Planning Commission has given reasonable consideration, among other things, to the character of the subdivision regulations and their suitability, whereas the Planning Commission has made preliminary report and submitted to the Board of County Commissioners, and whereas the Board of County Commissioners has given due public notice of a hearing relating to such and has held such public hearings, and whereas all requirements of SDCL 11-2 with regard to the preparation of these revised regulations and subsequent action of the Board of County Commissioners has been met, and whereas Brookings County, South Dakota Board of County Commissioners deems it necessary for the purpose of promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the county, to adopt a revised subdivision ordinance. Therefore be it ordained that the 2007 revised subdivision ordinance is hereby amended as attached hereto by the Board of County Commissioners, Brookings, South Dakota. So, would there be a motion to approve?
Move approval?
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded. We will open the public hearing on this item. If there are any proponents for this amended ordinance? Any proponents? Any opponents? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments or questions by the commissioners? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Jensen,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Excellent. We will move back to item 6C, Finance Officer's Report. Lori? We will note the be it noted items include the auditor's account with the treasurer, payroll and additives total, highway expenditures report, the registers of deeds statement of fees collected. And so that information is in there. Item I is action to approve second quarter general fund transfers per budget appropriations. And so the first one is from General Fund 101-4-911-4294 to Highway and Bridge Fund 201-3-371-0000 in the amount of $419,988.50. And then the second is from General Fund 101-4-911-4290 to Emergency Management Fund 226-3-371-0000 in the amount of $38,112.50. Would there be a motion to approve second quarter transfers?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Move on to item 8, regular business. 8A is the first reading of ordinance 2022-04, an ordinance authorizing rezoning of a portion of outlot 15 of outlots 15, 16, 17, 18, inclusive of the west half of the northeast quarter of section 11, township 109 north, range 50 west, Madera Township. That portion of outlot 15 to be rezoned will be known as Lot A of Outlot 15 in the west half of the south half of the northeast quarter of Section 11 Township 109 North, Range 50 West of the 5th Prime Meridian, Brookings County, South Dakota. This is the first reading only. The date and time of the second reading will be Tuesday, July 19th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Item 8B is action to approve Resolution 22-22, a plat of Block 1, Greenwich Edition in the northeast quarter of Section 21, Township 112, North, Range 49 west of the 5th Prime Meridian, Brookings County, South Dakota. Would there be a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Call the roll, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item C, action to approve resolution number 22-23, a plat of lot 1 of the GTK edition of the east half of section 8 and the west half of section 9, township 109 north, range 51 west of the 5th Prime Meridian, Brookings County, South Dakota. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item? And that comes to us with a unanimous approval by the Planning Commission
Yes.
on that one. Okay. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item D, action to approve resolution number 22-24, a plat of tract 1 of Crevier's Edition in the north half of the northeast quarter of section 22, township 109 north, range 48 west of the 5th Prime Meridian, Brookings County, South Dakota. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Jensen,
Aye.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item E, action to approve Agreement 22-64, an application for occupancy of right-of-way of county highways to be made by Sioux Valley Energy in Madera Township. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Any comments?
It's underground for servicing a residence.
Super. Thanks, Brian. Any further comments by the commissioners? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item F, action to approve Agreement 22-65, an application for occupancy of right-of-way of county highways made by Sioux Valley Energy in Richland Township. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Second.
Any comments?
Same.
Same thing. Thanks, Brian. Any further discussion from the commission? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item G, action to approve agreement number 22-66, an agreement for the provision of limited professional services between Brookings County and Architecture Incorporated for Government Center desk modifications. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Any comments on that one?
This is to get us to a point where we can get some pricing information for desk modifications in equalization, register of deeds, human services, and the commission office, as well as the county development office changes. So I think this just gets us to a point where we have a design and can get to a price and then see where we want to go from there. So.
Any questions by the commission? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Pierce.
Aye.
Bartley.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item H, action to accept the Brookings County Housing Study. This was presented a week ago-ish in a joint session with the city council. So would there be a motion to approve?
Can I ask a question before we have that motion?
Sure.
Why do we take action on this?
I think we help finance it.
So the city took action because it was their meeting. And so I believe both groups that helped fund it were taking action to approve the study as accepted because it is approval of the final deliverable and allows the consultant final payment.
I think the city accepted it that night, but I don't think we did.
Right.
But my point is, it's a study that somebody did. What does it mean when we accept it, and why are we doing that? That just doesn't make sense to me. They did the study, and are we just saying then that when we accept it that we agree with what their findings are? What does accepting it mean?
Except that their work is complete.
Yes.
Okay.
It, though I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the way the contract for them is written is it's likely a deliverables-based final payment, and therefore, without acceptance of the final deliverable, they can't get paid for the final deliverable.
Okay.
Mhm. Would there be a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
And now discussion.
Well, here's the reason I wanted to ask that question. The study, which Amy does a wonderful job and she did a great presentation, and it's wonderful information for the city of Brookings, but I disagree with some of the findings that she made as relates to our joint jurisdiction area. And everything that was in there as relates to housing in our joint jurisdiction area was exactly what the city wants, and not anything that really addressed what the county or what would maybe be in the best interest of some of our citizens that don't live in the city in the joint jurisdiction area. And I had a problem with that. But I don't care that she gets paid. I just don't want to vote and say, I agree with what she put in the study or what their organization put in the study, because I disagree with some of those findings.
Would you care to elaborate on some of the points of disagreement so that it's in the public record?
Certainly. When we talk about housing in the joint jurisdiction area, I am of the firm belief that that's the area where we can allow some alternate housing opportunities for people that don't want to live in a 75 by 120 foot lot, okay? And there are multiple different ways that we can do that. That's not addressed in the study. Okay? Or just partially addressed, so that we're only doing any housing in the joint jurisdiction area that would probably be taken into city limits at some time, and then we'd do lot by lot by lot development.
Sure.
That's my problem with it. It just didn't really look at maybe those further areas out that are never going to be part of the city, where we could be looking at some other type of housing opportunities. We don't do that in there.
Sure. Commissioner Pierce, would your recommendation then to be to accept the study, but with a specific letter of items that potentially this organization would disagree with?
No, I don't.
Or ask Amy for further clarification?
I don't know that we need to do any of that. And I don't have any problem with them getting paid for the study that they did.
Sure.
But it really does not reflect the best interest, in my opinion, of the county. It does reflect the best interests of the city, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I just don't want to say I agree with everything that's in that study.
Sure. Were there any thoughts related to our rural communities in terms of how some of those things were handled or elaborated upon?
That's what I was going to bring up, was hoping that it would have included some more of the smaller communities in the study. I don't know if they didn't choose to participate or why they weren't included in the study, but we did have Volga and Aurora, but there was other communities I was hoping to see some recommendations on.
Are there, would you care to make those communities specifically noted for the record, and we can ask Amy if they did further analysis of those communities?
Well,
White Elkton, for
White
example?
Elkton and yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. I don't know if they made it all the way over to Highway 81 to kind of assess parts of Arlington that are within Brookings County, or if they assessed any portions of the Lake Park District, since those are all Brookings County residents on the south side of the lake as well. And so those are questions that I have for Amy in terms of understanding how some of those outlying residential areas were being handled and or studied. So
Well, White and Elkton are more growing.
Absolutely.
And, Bruce is growing some, but not like White or Elkton.
And I think White and Elkton both do a good job of addressing workforce housing issues with a different demographic in mind. And so understanding that students are more inclined and young professionals who work in Brookings are probably more inclined to live in closer proximity, and folks who are looking for a little bit more access to agricultural opportunities, those types of things might be in some of those little bit farther away areas as well. Where there's a little bit more availability of land as opposed to the expense of land immediately adjacent to Brookings. I think those are all good points to add as well.
One of my concerns with approving the study is that housing is always going to be an issue that'll be talked about. This study will be talked about maybe for the next 5 years. Let's just pick that number for now. And I would like the county not to be beat over the head with, well, it said in the study this about county development, when I'm not sure that what they put in there for us is really what's in the best interest of our citizens. That was my concern. It's not that I'm opposed to the study, but I just, in the future, well, let's say it this way. In the past, when we had a housing study, as we made policy decisions, we frequently referred back to that study. And I don't think this study is good for the county in that regard.
Commissioner
Couple
Bartley.
comments. One of the things the study did provide for was the fact that both obviously Aurora and Volga are growing communities and are developing and moving forward. And I think part of the study's results stated that we should encourage that development for affordable housing in those, what you want to call them, bedroom communities or whatever you want to call it. They're very important for our economic success in Brookings County and for the city of Brookings. So, and also for those communities. So, yeah, I agree with Commissioner Jensen on White should have been included and possibly some others. So I think as we look at this study, it's basically what it says it is. It's a study. There were some recommendations. I don't know if you could pull all the way up on the slide presentation of the recommendations. I found that the recommendations to me were a little bit lacking in some data to how to use those recommendations, because I sat through the presentation and I got down to the end and I really didn't learn anything other than some numbers that I didn't already know or felt that I knew anyway, in my opinion. So, but when it came down to not strategies necessarily, there were some other recommendations, weren't there? on funding opportunities and so forth that involve the private sector in combination with some public, private development things that are extremely difficult to encourage development in communities or existing sites. I know the city is trying to concentrate some of its development with higher densities. Whether you need to go higher densities when you go out into those other communities or not will remain to be seen by the developers who decide to develop in those other communities. In the city of Brookings, to Commissioner Pierce's objection to wanting to develop larger lots in a joint jurisdictional area, there's always issues with that, and that's something that I think the county commission, planning commission will address the housing issue separately from the joint jurisdiction ordinance, which may include things that would allow things in the joint jurisdiction area. So it's not part of this particular housing study. And was it geared primarily for the city? Yes, it was their idea to do it. We agreed to fund. I don't know what our funding was. Was it $10,000? Yeah, we agreed to pay that amount to see what they were going to do and include parts of the county. Because originally the study was just basically the city of Brookings. So we wanted it expanded a little bit further. But again, I don't think we learned a lot that we didn't already know, that those communities out there that are developing are important to us, and that they get developed correctly is up to the cities and the developers, not necessarily the county and our rules. So, but to stay on top of it, I think again, this is just accepting the report. It's finished. It is what it is, and we'll be paying for it.
I don't think there's any reason that we couldn't have staff and commissioner comments addressed back to Amy for clarification so that we can kind of add some of those questions or comments or her responses into kind of the way that we're viewing and using it on the county development side. Because I don't think that Richard or Bob had any opportunity to even look at it prior to, I mean, that presentation came at you cold. And so it may be to our advantage to ask for some staff feedback if there are items that are directly potentially at odds with county zoning issues or some of those types of things as well.
We're at a little bit of a disadvantage today because Commissioner Krogman was a part of that study group, and he's not here to fill in any blanks or answer questions. But
Could we table this? Is there some reason we're in a hurry? Because I really do think Commissioner Krogman might have some things to say about the study and the joint jurisdiction area.
Do we want to submit our questions in the interim while we table it as well, so that those questions might potentially be answered by the group from RDG and Amy, so that we've got some answers to those related to White or Elkton or other outlying areas?
I guess that's up to everybody else. I did have an opportunity to talk to her after the meeting, and
Okay.
I just didn't think it reflected what was in our best interest. And I don't have any problem with a motion that says that we acknowledge receipt of the housing study.
Sure.
But accepting, does that mean we approve it? I'm worried about saying that is how different groups will interpret that down the road when this study's being looked at.
Fair.
So
So Commissioner
I make
Pierce,
a motion to table.
okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of tabling the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will table that item for the next meeting. So that will be July 5th. So the July 5th meeting. Okay. Moving on, item I, action to approve a culvert project funding request from Preston Township in the amount of $7,245 as a part of the county's township assistance program. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
second.
Any discussion on this one?
I was out and looked at it. Looks like it's going to be a good project.
Brian, is your microphone working?
Is that better?
That is.
Yeah, I was out and looked at it. Looks like it's going to be a good project. The culverts are indeed rusted out at the bottom.
Okay. Perfect. Any questions by the commissioners? I think this falls right in line with what the goal of the program is proactive maintenance of those types of structures. So if there are no further comments or questions, call the roll, please.
Pierce,
Aye.
Bartley,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Horsma.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item J, action to approve a request from Katra Voss from Midway Camp to conduct a fireworks display on Saturday, June 25th, 2022 at dusk at Midway Camp. The address is 46576 211th Street, Volga, South Dakota. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item?
Is everything okay with the fire chief on this?
They did reach out actually initially to the Volga Fire Department, who sent them to me to get on the agenda for approval, so I know that they've been in contact. I think they're okay with it. I did say, I let them know that, you know, one of the asks usually is to let the fire department know when you're doing this. We'll also be contacting dispatch to let them know that this fireworks display would may be taking place at this time. So if they get calls from folks, because we're just outside that 4th of July window where you can shoot fireworks off. So.
And then this would typically be subject to any, I mean, if there are burn bans or conditions are not favorable, the fire marshal has any right to say no.
Right. They will, as a condition of approval, we can say to contact the Volga Fire Department and let them know.
Yep.
I'm curious if, oh, Marty's gone. I was gonna ask if he had any issues, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion carries. Item number 9, Commission Department Directors Report.
I provided numbers. The VSO for May, 97 appointments or claims that were worked, 3 outreach events hosted, the VSO training, state VSO training, and then the DAV van requests. Other things that were part of the packet, the general fund surplus analysis, we're at 39%. That's just below the 10-year average. We'll continue to monitor that as time goes on. Bob, County Development Director Bob Hill had asked about doing a supplemental budget this year to get some budget authority for the PPCC pod group within his budget. I think he was just asking for $500. I don't know if we necessarily need to do a supplemental budget yet. I think just for that dollar amount, I don't know that we need to go to through the process of noticing it. I think you could authorize him to spend, you know, some money there, and then we'll just watch that budget, and then if need be, as the year goes on, we could maybe look at something down the road. My guess is we'll do supplemental budgets later, and so we could cover more with that rather than doing just a notice now. But if you give consensus to go ahead and do that, I'll let him know that he can spend up to that $500 for that group, and then we'll just watch the budget. Okay. I think we'd mentioned at the last meeting about NACO. Mike, I know you had talked about maybe attending. Do you know if you are going to attend or not?
Still working on it.
Okay. We have to get that NACO delegate information sent in shortly. I don't know exactly what the deadline is. So,
I'll let you know shortly.
shortly. Okay.
I have one conflict that I need to resolve.
Okay. Sounds good.
If I can.
As a budget update, a week ago, we had our budget hearings. I met with Lori and Jen yesterday, and we went over some things. I'm kind of busy putting numbers into the provisional budget document to kind of see where we're at. But I think we're back to where we want to be now with some of the decisions that were made tentatively made anyway last week. So but what we'll do on the July 5th meeting is have kind of another little budget work session to look over some things as part of the regular meeting on the 5th, because I don't think it'll take too long. So, also the library pet parade is asking to close down 6th Avenue, July 21st at 6 p.m. I believe that's like a Thursday evening after 6 o'clock. If you're okay with that, I'll go ahead and let them do that. One other thing we had, Terry brought to our attention as we were doing some maintenance on the chillers downstairs. There was some question on some of the wiring. It looked like maybe caught something. You know, if you recall, we had the chiller fire and things last summer. So it looked like some of the wires were doing some things down there that they weren't supposed to be doing on one of the other chillers. So we went ahead and did a maintenance fix on that. It was about $2,500. That's a shared cost with the city, but I wanted you to be aware of that we had to remove some fuse block holders and some bad connectors and get those fixed. So hopefully that was a good catch and some good preventative maintenance there. CDI golf outing, I don't know if you received this. I think we'd done a save the date a little bit earlier, but it is August 11th. It's a Thursday. And I know the county usually puts together a team. If you want me to wait again, we don't have to register for a while. If you want me to wait, I can bring it up again when Commissioner Krogman is here. I know he usually likes to participate too, but if you're thinking about that, or if you know you have a conflict right now, let me know, but I want to participate in that again. Let's see, I think that's all I had. Trying to see, I had notes in several different places, but nope, that's it. That is it.
Any questions for Stacy? State's Attorney's Office report.
So last Thursday, I was asked by the South Dakota legislature to attend their. I went out to Pierre on Thursday and testified before the committee about juvenile justice and specifically what we're doing here in Brookings County. As it relates to juvenile justice, it was me, Greg Sadazane, who's the director for UJS, and then there was a number of school superintendents. There were law enforcement officials. I was the only state's attorney that testified on Thursday, but I think what the legislature saw here in Brookings County is something that can be modeled for the rest of the state. One of the key issues, of course, is the rural school districts. They don't have the resources that we're privileged to have here in Brookings. But I also commented on the fact that the juvenile justice reforms in 2016 did not impact violent crime as it relates to juveniles. The only impact the reforms had is on the nonviolent. And one of the things that we often hear is that the nonviolent consequences, accountability, doesn't have enough teeth. But prior to the reforms, the accountability, the consequence was jail. So if you didn't go to school, you went to jail. If you didn't follow through on mental health treatment as a juvenile, you went to jail. And the reforms got away from that, rightfully so. And I have been very outspoken about my support for those reforms. And so the question then becomes, how do you intervene in a nonviolent delinquent juvenile, but do it in a way that provides more mental health treatment, puts them in an environment where they can succeed? And so I have a letter to the editor that's going to be published tomorrow, and we've also put stuff up on our Facebook page relating to my more nuanced thoughts on this topic. But just in summary, the early results of that alternative school, Bobcat Plains Academy, that's being run through the Teen Center at the Boys and Girls Club, has just been outstanding. So 23 high school students were referred to this alternative school. 18 of the 23 completed more credit hours than they did the previous semester at the high school. And then half of the 23 completed double the amount of credit hours that they did at the previous semester. And so these were youth that were struggling with truancy and struggling with disruptive behavior at the high school. And so my position is that increased accountability and consequence that members of the community are asking for as it relates to this nonviolent segment, I think it has more to do with trying to put them in an environment where they can sort of become more receptive to that treatment, whether that's mental health, job skills, other personal development. But also, parents have to believe in their kids, and parenting is part of that. Whether it can be simple as getting your kid to treatment, getting them to the alternative school, but we need more parental buy-in from some of these youth that are struggling in this area. And then, of course, we've partnered with Brookings Behavioral as well as Avera Behavioral Health to provide some of these resources. And so I think the legislature wanted to hear about how to organize these existing resources, but do it in a way that sets it up where you can have a framework successfully through diversion outside of the court system, because ultimately the only power a judge has is to threaten jail time. You know, that's the whole adult criminal justice system, is if you don't follow through on programming, whether, you know, that's mental health or other programming through probation, you're going to go to jail to incentivize that. But when that's taken off the table in the juvenile system, it becomes a little bit more complicated and nuanced. But I think that positive environment is a key to that. So that was my testimony for the legislature. All that stuff is posted online, where you can hear my comments on that. Week prior, I attended the National District Attorneys Association training in DC. It was geared towards executive leadership. And I'll just briefly cover 4 of the major topics. More and more across the country, states' attorneys, prosecutors are being asked to be more transparent about things that are happening within the criminal justice system. And how do you do that, I think, is a area that is probably debatable. But one of the things that we've done, of course, is to create that Facebook page where we're putting all of this court information that is public, but doing it in a way that's very accessible to the public. And so being more transparent about who's being charged with what, who's being convicted, and then the outcomes associated with that. Other states' attorneys across the country are doing that same thing. Retention was a big issue that was talked about. In this work environment, there are so many individuals that are going back and forth with different jobs, and retention was a key there. One of the things they talked about was the popular thing to do, of course, is to interview and then do exit interviews. But they talked about doing status interviews, where you're actually sitting down with your existing employees and asking for a status about what do you like about your job, what can we do better, how can we keep you with this organization. And so trying to retain existing employees to try to keep them from going somewhere else, and trying to figure out what new challenges they might want in their existing job. You know, and I think about some of that with our staff too, about things that I can do in the office to keep them challenged and motivated. COVID backlog is a really big issue across the country. Because of court systems being shut down during COVID, there's a tremendous backlog of cases that have occurred. In South Dakota, I think we did a better job than most other states about making sure that we didn't have those backlogs. Specifically here in Brookings County, need to compliment the judges that we had here to accommodate the fact that we had safety and health issues with COVID, but how can we make sure that cases are still moving through the system? We didn't have too many cases impacted by that. We had a few of the larger cases. I know that homicide case that we had was impacted by COVID issues with various witnesses, and so that was one case that was impacted by that. But also talking about how do you prioritize when you do have that backlog. And then lastly, doing more with less. Budgets are shrinking, but as public employees, we're asked to do almost more with less of a budget. And I think that's where our diversion programs come in. And so the challenge for me as state's attorney is, how do I go out into the community, find things that can work within the justice system, but also ask you county commissioners, not asking for more money to do those things. And so I think that's probably the challenge to all of us elected officials, is how do we not compromise our work product, but also have a shrinking budget at the same time. The cool thing about those conferences is that all the materials are given to you. So if any of you commissioners want more information about those materials, that were provided to me at this conference. I have all of that, and I'd be happy to share that. So.
Great. Questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Pierce.
They should be. Part of that is getting that form that comes through you as to be approved as the step increase. But there's also a separate evaluation form that all department heads should be doing and sitting down and meeting with each of their employees as well and completing that. That goes into personnel files.
No, I agree. And any department head listening, I'd be happy to share those materials with you, because the status was different than those evaluations that we do. Because the status is more about, finding the things that are things that they want to explore and do to stay challenged, rather than maybe more constructive criticisms on the evaluation side. But, every department head runs those a little bit differently. It just depends. So.
Other questions or comments? Thanks.
Yep.
We'll move on to item number 11, Commissioner reports and discussion items, and we'll start with Commissioner Pierce.
In the joint jurisdiction area, that's all being handled through the city already. We're not changing that. County still keeps jurisdiction and responsibility for the ag areas in joint jurisdiction. And I'm hoping when we do our next public hearing, people will understand that a little bit better. So that was a good meeting. I think we went maybe 3 hours. We were there a long time. On June 14th, I attended the budget hearings with all the rest of you, and then attended that city-county meeting to hear the housing study, the presentation that we've already discussed. On June 16th, I met with somebody from Ostream Landscaping over at the courthouse. We've picked out the placement areas for it's going to be 9 new trees because the 2 of them that were on the list that you all looked at when we last met didn't bud out. So we've got 9 trees, and that'll be enough. They expect to have them planted within the next couple of weeks. And we'll be in budget with what was allocated for that. Yesterday, I attended a Zoom meeting with Heather Murfield from the Welfare Office and the people from Helpline. And we went through that memorandum of understanding and that handbook a little bit. The 2 issues that I see, one was, and I talked about this when it came in front of us, the hold harmless provisions in that ordinance, which it's never good for the county to be signing a document where we're holding someone else or some other entity harmless, which means that we're the deep pocket when it comes to a lawsuit. And they'd already had this conversation with Cottington County, and Cottington County just said no. Okay? So they came up with some language that's just perfect, and when Dan's office does the review of that, we should use that for some of our other kinds of contracts because it just says, no, we're not being liable. Our taxpayers shouldn't have to pay if you all make a mistake. So, which just left then one thing that I had a concern about, and I think Heather will come back and talk to Dan about this, and they're going to discuss it. There's all that language in there that says that nothing will get disclosed to law enforcement that happens with Helpline. Okay. Well, Dan is the chief law enforcement officer for Brookings County, and he supervises welfare and Heather, and he is going to have to know some things about what's going on with that program. How are we going to handle that? So that's the other thing. If we decide to participate in this program, there won't be any cost. I think it's for 2 years that they have a grant for counties. After that, it should be, assuming we've got 2 people on, and we should have 2 people because in case something happens, Heather gets hit by a bus or whatever, you need a backup that's trained to use the system. And it would cost us less than $1,000 a year based on the current fee schedule. And that would be my report.
I have a couple questions that I want to make sure are clarified. The joint jurisdiction ordinance draft somewhere, correct?
Yes.
So anybody from the public that is trying to read through that in order to prepare for a next public hearing, please do. It's right on the website. And then the regarding the trees in the courthouse grounds, was there any discussion about the potential damage or repairs necessary for the Veterans Monument over there that got tree crunched?
That would be a different issue. I looked
Okay.
at those. I don't know what we're planning on doing with that.
Okay. That
Yeah,
might be a discussion item for another time, but just wanted to mention
Yes,
that while we were
need
talking about the
to,
courthouse grounds.
Yeah, decide who would be someone who could fix that.
Sounds good. Other questions for Commissioner Pierce? Thank you. Commissioner Bartley.
On the 13th, Commissioner Pierce covered it pretty well with the joint jurisdiction meeting, just a couple as always. People need to understand that wasn't just done in a year's time. We've been working on that joint jurisdiction for almost 4 or 5 years, ever since I've been here. And before that, it obviously got waylaid with the COVID issues. We couldn't meet. We couldn't get things together. But we have a pretty good product right now. A lot of effort and time and meetings were put together to hash out the joint jurisdictional area, to make some changes. Not some huge changes, but we were looking at the growth of the city and protecting that issue. We were looking at, obviously, wellhead protection areas. The city is kind of taking care of that by buying some of those properties up in the wellhead protection area. At the same time, we have a floodplain map that we have to follow as far as development outside of the city's jurisdiction with commercial and housing or residential. We have all the ag property that's in the joint jurisdiction. If a permit comes in and it's on an ag property for conditional use, it goes immediately to Richard's office if they come in and it's a residential area that they want to do a conditional use on, it goes, or a building permit, it goes to the city side. So it defines what we've been doing more appropriately in the ordinance. Is that correct, Richard? Okay. So that's one of the things that the public needs to understand is we tried to streamline this, and as far as that, it's a decision basically, but it's easier to put together a smaller group to listen to that. So I think that was positive. There was, discussion on the amount of members on each for several different meetings, and finally got resolved. So again, look at it as a project that took a long time to put together. It's maybe not a perfect document, but if we wait for perfect, we'll never get it accomplished. We can always make adjustments to it as we go down the road. As I mentioned earlier, with the housing component of it, most of that involves the county plan commission and not the joint jurisdictional area at this point in time, but it may have some effects on what happens in the ag area in the joint jurisdiction based on what the planning commission may change or not change in the future as far as the county is concerned. So again, it's not a perfect document, but please take time to read it. It's rather lengthy. If you have questions on that particular document and you want some answers to those, it could be just a clarification. Feel free to get a hold of Richard at his office, and he can walk you through those changes or what your questions you may have. Sometimes that's a little bit easier than coming to the meeting with a question that we could have answered ahead of time for you. Attended the budget meetings. Again, I want to thank Stacy and the entire staff and all the department directors. It makes it easier for us when they come prepared and when they come with options and they come with a budget that's pretty tight, because that's what we always look at as a tight budget. I think the work that was done was exemplary, and I appreciate it. It makes it a lot easier to go through that budget process. There's a lot of things there that we have to decide. The 14th was a housing study. I've already made comments on that. The 16th, we had a jail meeting that Commissioner Jensen and I attended. I'll just touch a couple of things and let Larry touch on the others. We are a little behind schedule simply because of some supplies. And when you look at some of the subcontractors, and we had the storm here, and some of those people had to go other places to do some things and haven't gotten back to our jail project. So they will get back. We're a priority as far as some deadlines are concerned, but at the same time, so are people's houses and other structures. So they'll come back and we'll get this completed. We will have an open house. It'll be on a short notice because we want to get it completed before we have the open house. We want it ready to go, but like the next day we're opening it. So it'll be a short notice that it's finished. We're not going to let it sit for a week to have an announce for an open house. We'll watch for that when you see it in the paper and on the, hopefully in the paper, but at least on the radio we'll announce it. We'll have that open house for that addition, and that would complete the project. So please look for that, and I apologize, it will be a short notice, but understand it is a jail. It's an active jail. And there were some other comments. I'll let Larry go to that. I appreciate the volunteers at BCOAC. I did arrive a little late last night for the meeting. Had some conflicts that didn't get over in time, but did stop by and thanked a few people, took a look at the improvements that were made in the shooting gun range. Absolutely, we are upgrading that facility to a first-class facility, and I hope the public knows that and goes out and uses it. And that completes my report.
Any questions for Commissioner Bartley? Commissioner Jensen?
I also on the 13th attended this joint zoning meeting along with numerous other people on the boundaries for the 3 mile joint jurisdiction. On the 14th, we had a long day. We started at 8 o'clock that morning and got done about 8 o'clock that evening. We did the budgets all day and then the housing meeting at 5, and we completed that day. On the 15th, Commissioner Bartley and myself sat down with the Fire Chiefs Association and discussed some funding requests that they had. On the 16th, jail meeting, wrapping up on some of the projects on the external part of the project. There'll be some new steps and sidewalks installed as they start to move their way out of the jail with the project. Last night I did attend the BCOAC Volunteer Appreciation. I said I can't say thank you enough to those guys. Great group of guys, and it's good to see them last night. That's all.
Great. Thank you. So the 9th, we had a PPCC pod meeting. folks that were discussing that transition for that falling under. And then the 10th was a BEDC board meeting. Had kind of a special session to discuss the signage ordinance for the city of Brookings and whether that's a potential impediment to the business community. And so there were some good comments, considerations there. On the 13th, that joint jurisdiction ordinance meeting also streams online on YouTube for folks that don't realize that. I watched it online, and so that's always something that folks can go back and watch as well. So that's on the county's YouTube channel. The 14th was also part of the budget hearings and the housing report joint meeting. And then the 15th, our BEDC board meeting specifically looked at kind of strategic planning and moving forward, those types of things as we look at budgets, especially for BEDC, and how collaboration looks with the research park moving forward. On the 16th, I spoke to the Leadership South Dakota State Government cohort, a little bit about leadership and county commission and the things that we do as county commissioners. And then yesterday was the NACO Arts and Culture Commission meeting. So that's one of the policy direction steering committees for NACO National. And then last night was the Brookings Behavioral Health and Wellness Board meeting. And we were specifically talking about, for that particular meeting, forward progress on the building project and kind of timelines and RFPs for design services and those types of things as we move forward. So that would be my report. If there's nothing else, we will move executive session in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2 parentheses 1 for personnel and 3 for consulting with legal counsel. Is there a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We will move into executive session after a brief recess.